Okay, so I rolled the attacker, West rolled the defender. Force breakdown for my French Buccaneers. I took a unit of 4 Marins with 1 medium cannon on a field carriage. I took 4 Enfants Perdus. I took 6 filibusters with a seasoned commander. And I took 5 buccaneers. Okay, so that's deployment. Scenario we rolled was raid. I rolled the attacker, Wes rolled the defender. In the raid, the defending player chooses 1 board quadrant, and the attacker will deploy within 6 inches of the opposite board edges, in which case Wes chose that quadrant, which means my deployment runs 6 inches along this side and this side of the table. Game length is 6 turns. The objective, the defender gains a strike point if the attacker has a unit that is not shaken within 4 inches of any objective markers, which are these. One on the gallows, the chest on the gallows, and the chest by the longboat. So the defender gains the strike point if the attacker has a unit that is not shaken within 4 inches of any objective marker, and the defender has no units that are not shaken within 4 inches of the same marker. The attacker gains a strike point if they have no units within 4 inches of an objective marker at the end of turn 3 or later. So it'll be a mad dash for me to get after these chests. All right. So this is my deployment. I got the Enfants Perdus coming up through the brushes here. I have my medium cannon on the rocky outcrop here. I got my Buccaneers coming up behind those rocks, and same thing with the commander and the filibusters.
For me today, I've got my Enfants Perdus out here by the gallows. Trying to keep them off of there. I've got a unit of 8 sea dogs over here by the building. I've got my commander with my veteran freebooters tucked in behind here, and my 8 filibusters waiting over here. So before the start of the game real quick, we both had to vanguard our Enfants Perdus. Dalton won the dice roll, moving his up into the brush over here, and then my guys just moved back a bit, hopefully not getting blasted by that cannon. And then we drew our hands, and surprise, surprise, I drew an event. We rolled that up. It was a confusion, which means I do not get to replace the event card with another card. So, yippee. We'll be back after turn 1, activation 1.
So on my side of things, when we drew hand, I pulled an event as well, and I drew stubborn, but for the first turn of the game, nobody has a fatigue point, so I do not get to remove that.
That's 2 turns in a row, or 2 games in a row for you.
Woohoo! Let's see how she go. Turn 1.
Turn 1, activation 1. I drew a spade to his heart, allowing me to activate first. I chose my commander's unit. He moved his unit out 4. They fired on the Marins with the cannon, missing all 4 shots. And then he command pointed to move the unit back. They fast reloaded one of their reload markers, and then I moved my sea dogs up 3 inches since they are in rough terrain on the beach.
Okay, turn 1, activation 1 for myself. To reciprocate, I decided to shoot the cannon at the filibusters here behind the house. I hit and then did another 2. Because it's a medium cannon, I rolled 3 extra dice after the initial hit, scoring another 2 hits, so 3 sunk, and he managed to save 1 of those hits. So it killed 2 of his filibusters, and they took a fatigue for the shots. Okay, turn 1, activation 2. I drew a heart. Wes passed. So I activated my Buccaneers here, and they moved 3 inches into the rocks, and that's pretty much it.
So turn 1, activation 3, I drew a spade to his club, allowing me to go first. I activated my sea dogs and moved them up 3 inches off of the beach.
And myself, I moved my Enfants Perdus 4 inches up. I thread the needle, Took 4 shots, hit once, killed 1 guy, put another fatigue on the filibusters, and then they snaked back into the long grass. Okay, turn 1, activation 4. I drew a spade to Wes's heart. It means I went first. My commander's unit, to start off, he gave a command point to the artillery crew here to have them reload one of their markers. They themselves moved up and then shuffled up a little bit further with the second activation, or second command point.
Myself, I used my heart to move these guys out 4 inches, fired on the guys with the cannon, no hits again, and then I pushed them back 4 inches.
That's the end of turn 1. Okay, we drew the hands for turn 2. I drew another event, rolled another 3, and got another stubborn. Unfortunately, none of my units had any fatigue on them, though, so I didn't get it removed. Okay, turn 2, activation 1. I drew a 13 of spades to Wes's 9 of spades, which means I went first. So with my activation, I activated the artillery crew. They, so activating with a spade procced their artillery crew, so they got a free reload. I reloaded for their only action, and then I pushed them to shoot again at the filibusters. Hitting again, only killing 1 guy this time, and it caused that unit to be shaken, so they went prone.
And then on my turn, I used the spade to activate them, rolling a rally test as a dedicated action, and only passed 1 of the tests, so they are no longer shaken, but they still have 2 fatigue, and are still prone.
Okay, turn 2, activation 2. I drew a spade to Wes's heart, which means I went first. All I really did was move the Buccaneers up with their action.
And for my action, I activated the Enfant Perdu, reloaded them twice, and because they're tough, I removed a fatigue marker, and that was it for them.
Okay, turn 2, activation 3. I drew a spade to Wes's diamond this time. So, with my activation, I activated the Enfant Perdu, and I, activating with a spade, procced their fast reload, and I just reloaded again.
I moved my commander's unit up 4 inches, reloaded them, and fired on the Buccaneers, I believe, generating no hits. I then used my command point to order my Enfant Perdu to fire on his commander's unit, doing 1 hit, 1 casualty, and 1 fatigue, and forcing out a fortune point. And then I used my final command point to move my Sea Dogs up 4 inches.
Okay, turn 2, activation 4. I drew a diamond to Wes's club, which means I went first. I moved my commander's unit up 8 inches. I used his command point on the Buccaneers to take shots at the Marineros, or the Sea Dogs that were here. Did 2 or 3 wounds, I want to say, and a fatigue. And then they themselves used the third command point, or the second command point, to fire their muskets point blank, and I think I did another 2 or 3 wounds. Did another 2 or 3 fatigue. Wes rolled poorly, and then used another fortune point and even rolled even worse. So it caused the unit to have 4 fatigues and to shatter, or not shatter, to break. So they fled back 4 inches.
My turn, I activated them with the club. They are inexperienced, so they only get 2 actions. They had to rally because they were shaken, which they did, and they only got rid of 2 of the fatigue markers. And that was that. So on my turn, I drew another event at the beginning of turn 3. Rolled a 1. It was a misfortune. We randomized that amongst all forces. It ended up being my Sea Dogs, who took 3 reload markers for their misfortune. So, yep. So turn 3, activation 1. We both drew spades. I drew the higher spade. So I activated my commander's unit. They fast reloaded. Half of them fired at the cannon unit to no avail again. and then they used their second action to move back. I command pointed this unit to reload, and I commanded this point to rally. They only got one of their fatigues removed.
For myself, I activated with a spade. I activated my commander's unit as well. It procced fast reload. The unit reloaded their muskets for their single action. He used his command point to fire at the Enfant Perdu here under the gallows. Ended up doing exceptionally well. Burned a fortune point to make sure of it. Hit 3 or 4, killed 3, and they took no fatigue from it. And then his second command point, I told the Buccaneers to move up to the edge of cover there. Okay, turn 3, activation 2. I drew a club to Wes's spade.
I activated first. I had an Enfant Perdu here. He moved 3 inches. Attempted to throw a grenade. He rolled a 2, so it exploded in his hand. He rolled 3 hits against himself and literally blew himself into a pink mist. And that was him.
So myself, with a club, I activated my Buccaneers, who just reloaded and fired at the Sea Dogs here under the gallows. I did a hit, and he saved it, but it caused a fatigue. So shaking the unit.
And dropping them prone.
Yes.
So, turn 3, activation 3, I drew a spade to his diamond, allowing me to go first again. I simply attempted to rally the Sea Dogs, who passed one of their resolve tests, so they're no longer shaken. They're still prone, laying on the beach there.
Myself, I activated with a diamond, so my artillery crew just reloaded 2 of their reload markers. Okay, turn 3, activation 4. I drew a heart to Wes's diamond, which means I went first. I moved up my Enfant Perdu through this forest here and took 4 shots at what were prone filibusters, and I just missed all of them.
So on my turn, they stood up and they returned fire and killed the 2 guys they could see through the bushes.
And caused 2 fatigue on the unit, which broke them, or not broke, which shook them, and they went prone.
So at the end of turn 3, we both have unshaken units within 4 inches of this objective, so nobody gains a strike point. However, I have lost over 50% of my force, so I have gained 2 strike points to his 0. I rolled a resolve check of 5 because my commander's in my freebooter unit. I rolled a 5, so the game gets to go on.
Okay, turn 4, activation 1. I drew a spade to Wes's heart, which means I went first. I activated my commander's unit, procced fast reload. With their action, I reloaded, and then the command point, one of the command points, I took shots at the Sea Dog unit here, hit nothing, and then I burned a fortune point, my last fortune point, to try and better it. I hit once, managed to sink a wound, and cause a fatigue. With the second command point, I rallied my Forlorn Hope that were in this forest here.
So with my heart, I moved up 8 inches with their 2 actions, and then I pushed them to charge, and with their free fight action, they killed both of the Perdu who were lying on the ground there. So turn 4, activation number 2. We have a heart to a club, so I activated my Sea Dogs. They rallied and got rid of 2 of their fatigue markers.
Myself, I activated my Buccaneers. They moved up 7 inches because they were still in rough terrain in the first action. Moved up 7 inches behind these barrels here, and then reloaded their muskets. Where are you? For 1. Okay, turn 5, activation 1. I drew a diamond to Wes's club. So I started with my commander's unit, then moved up, wiped out the unit of Sea Dogs in combat. They were within 8, so it only took 2 actions. A free fight action killed them. And then with his command points, I moved them back another 4 inches for another fatigue. And then I reloaded the Buccaneers.
And for myself, I moved my filibusters up 8 inches and fired their pistols into the Buccaneers, hitting twice, killing once, and generating 2 fatigue. So that was turn 5, activation number 2. I activated with a spade to his diamond, so I went first. I activated my commander's unit, who ordered my filibusters to charge into his buccaneers, wiping that unit out. The commander's unit themselves moved up 3 inches through the sand, fast reloaded, and then fired on his commander's unit, generating 2 hits, no wounds, and no fatigue.
For myself, because he wiped out my buccaneers the previous turn, all I had was the cannon crew left on a full reload. I just took pretty much a point blank shot at the filibusters, hit the extra 3 dice because I was hitting on 2s, and I wiped the unit out.
So at the end of turn 5, I have killed 10 of his models to his killing of 20 of mine, generating 3 strike points for me, plus a 4th for not having a unit to contest that treasure. I've killed 10 of his models, generating 2 strike points for him. So I was up 2 strike points, forcing a resolve check again. I rolled a 6, meaning that my boys keep in the fight. So I'll see you on turn 6.
Okay, turn 6, activation 1, and that's pretty much the game. So I activated with the heart. Wes activated with the club. My filibusters here, because I was on 2 fatigue, I was down in action. So they rallied, taking one of their actions, taking one of their fatigues, leaving them on 1, and I shot their pistols at the freebooters over here, killing one of them, causing no fatigue. And with the other action point, with the other command point, I rallied the unit of Marins here.
And then on my turn, I activated my last unit, which was my commander and my veteran freebooters. They moved 3 inches up onto the soil, and then they moved 4 inches up and declared a charge. They weathered a turn of defensive fire and charged in, killing 2 filibusters and causing a fatigue, which shook the commander's unit for my opponent.
And effectively ending the game. Wes brought it back to it, but it ends up being 4 strike points for Wes versus 3 for me. So marginal victory for the Buccaneers.